I left high school a year early. There was some kind of law, or I don't remember how it worked, but some rule in Iowa that I didn't finish my high school, all the requirements, but I could go to certain colleges early that would accept you without a high school degree, and I had to take classes at college that would fulfill the rest of my high school requirements. And once I figured that out, I jumped on the chance to get the fuck out of Dodge, as we say, because I had to get out of the conservative, imprisoning high school. And so I went to Drake University, which is in Des Moines, and still lived at home and still worked on finishing my high school degree. But it was kind of cool to get out of high school a year early and be in college. And I remember one day I saw some posters that were put up. This is 1982 now. In 1982 at Drake University in Des Moines, I saw some posters go up about some film and rally against nuclear weapons, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what I want to find and be a part of. So I went to see this film. It was called If You Love This Planet, and it was made by Dr. Helen Caldicott, who's an Australian doctor, but better known as an anti-nuclear activist. And this was during the Reagan years when the kind of Cold War rhetoric was really intense, and the stockpiling of nuclear weapons and the fear of nuclear war seemed a lot more prominent than it is now. And I saw this film which showed footage of the devastation in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I was pretty shocked, and I wondered why that film footage wasn't being shown so much on television. And I also knew as a kid that my non-Jewish friends didn't see much Holocaust footage. That they showed it to us every year in Hebrew school, and they wouldn't show that kind of thing on US TV, just like they didn't show what the US bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki did on TV. They would show fictional depictions or stories dealing with the Holocaust, but not the actual footage. And so I noticed that Jewish friends watched this, but other people, I would tell them about it and they hadn't seen it. I'm sure some had, but many hadn't. And I remember in that film, I think it was in that film, Dr. Helen Caldicott talked a lot about the psychological numbness that people have towards the pain that gets inflicted on people by things like Holocaust or nuclear war. And so for me, it was like this was an example of the voice in my head that said, never again, let this happen. And here we are in this nuclear arms race, and here is these people having this rally against nuclear weapons. So I went to that rally the next day and saw that there weren't many students who seemed to care. And I kind of noticed that the students that were there looked a little more like they were fringy or on the outside and not in the mainstream. And I was actually kind of scared to go up and talk to people. I was really intimidated. They all seemed really confident and belligerent in a kind of hot way, and I was just like a shy kid. I was like, oh, I want to try and go up and meet these people and be a part of it, and I felt like it was like it just looked like I didn't. Maybe I had this voice in my head that was still like, how do I get myself to belong? That was like a lot of a story of my teenage life, I guess. But I did go up finally and talk to some people and start to get a little involved. And once I finished my first year at Drake University in Des Moines, I also met my high school graduation requirements, and then I was free to go elsewhere, and I really wanted to not live with my parents or close to them. And I love my parents and they're great, but I felt like it was a good time in my life to like break free more. And both my brothers had also like gone to college away from home, and so I went to University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and before school even started, like, I moved into the dorm, and I found this newspaper that was like a disorientation. Okay.
You continue.
Dateline, late August 1983. I moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to a kind of disgusting dormitory in Ann Arbor, and I found this newspaper because I went to school a few days before it started to go move in the dorm and go through orientation, and I found a sort of disorientation newspaper put out by radical students. They were called the Progressive Student Network, and I read it cover to cover and just was like, I was blown away by it, because the newspaper talked about how the university had been cutting a lot of the programs I was interested in. They were cutting the arts, they were cutting a lot of social sciences, they dismantled the geography department, which is actually what I was interested in majoring in. But they somehow had all these funds to build big new business school and increase engineering and increase certain things that I wasn't interested in, and the priorities seemed really messed up. And the newspaper talked a lot about why students need to get involved to try and save programs so there'd be more diversity in education. They cut education, the School of Education funding, big time. And we're like, well, don't we want to train good teachers? Go out and teach? No, we need businessmen and engineers to do what? How about develop nuclear weapons? Because the newspaper I picked up also talked about how at the engineering school they were conducting stealth technology research. And it talked about how at the School of Public Health they were researching nerve gas. Well, really what they were researching was an antidote for nerve gas. But in war, you need an antidote for your weapons so your troops aren't affected. And I was just blown away. I was like, I found out the university had, I think it was $14 million of military contracts, and I wondered why the University of Michigan had like one of the larger, more known protest movements in the late 60s and early 70s, where they had banned military research, or stopped it anyway. And then slowly, as that radical era faded, the military research was coming back into the universities, and professors went for it because they went where the funding was. And Reagan was president, and the funding was definitely increasing for the military, while education was cut and aid to poor people was cut. And what happened in the Reagan administration was paralleled at places like the University of Michigan and so many other places, where these big corporate-style universities follow the political whims and agenda because they want the bucks. And big universities, big public universities like University of Michigan care more about their research agendas and that money than they do about teaching people. Well, I didn't realize that when I went there. Like, I learned a crash course right away. And the first month I was at school, I was no longer so scared to go to meetings and things as I was my year at Drake University, where I was really intimidated by what seemed like this sort of cool, hardcore crowd of students, and I was like ready to be like, okay, I can handle it. I see the newspaper says go to this meeting, and I went, and